Sunset Time by Albinocorn, Chapter 19, Phantom in the Hourglass. Helena spread throughout her body, pulling everything until nothing remained of her. Though, had there ever been anything there just to begin with? She was what was she? She was just her radiance. She knew that now. Maybe she had known all along. Maybe that's why she felt so empty, so cold, so alone. Sunset? Sunset stared and blinked rapidly at the blurry ceiling. She sat from her bed and looked over at Twilight, whose expression was more curious than concerned. Sorry, I couldn't tell if you were awake. I've never seen someone with such a blank look on a pony before. No, Sunset said lifelessly. I'm awake. It's fine. Sunset, dear, you sound awful, Rarity said from Sunset's other side. She paused her mane brushing. Did you get enough sleep last night? Yeah, I got plenty. She kept her eyes down on her blankets. She couldn't bring herself to make eye contact with any of them. They looked at her once, or maybe they were going to look at her, with disdain, fear, loathing. For a brief moment, Twilight had hated her. Maybe she always had. Sunset, what's the matter? Twilight asked. You know what the matter is, Sunset thought barely. She shook her head. No, Twilight hadn't done this, at least not yet. But she will. She did. Sunset gripped her blanket, rubbing the warm cloth between her freezing hooves. She opened her mouth, but nothing escaped. Now, everyone was awake and giving her a range of odd expressions. Some tired, some confused, and some worried. She needed to tell them. Luna had told her to confide in them. Where did she start? How did she tell them such a horrible truth when she was still processing everything herself? The sucking hollowness returned, threatening to swallow her up again. It ate away at her, piece by piece, inch by inch. She needed to do something. Anything to make it stop. Say something. Go somewhere. Do something. The train's walls were pressing in on her. Everything seemed so small and condensed. She couldn't breathe. Her chest constricted, trying to crush her heart. Thoughts screamed in her head. She wasn't a pony. She wasn't anything. She was just... Sunset! Sunset snapped her head up, finding her friends all around her, along with a paper bag floating in front of her face. She snatched it and breathed deeply into it. The bag expanded and contracted with sharp breath until her hyperventilation had passed. Even so, she kept it around her mouth, her stomach churning. Whoa, what's that all about? Rainbow asked. You all right, Sugar Cube? You're looking mad pale, Applesex said with sisterly concern. Sunset waited for the words to touch her tongue. They caught her throat and tumbled back down into her stomach. Instead, she removed her mouth from the bag and mumbled, food, before staggering out of the bed. She paused for a moment to regain her footing as another spike of nausea stabbed through her. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for it to subside, while her friends hovered close by, enough so she could feel their individual body heat. She might have said something, but it was static in Sunset's ears. When she regained her senses, she pushed past him, throwing compartment door after compartment door open until she reached the main exit and stumbled outside. She relished the morning air and the sun on her face, as if feeling it for the first time. It was warm and vibrant and reminded her that she was alive. It was snuffed out in a moment. The warmth was sucked away from her, leaving her cold and empty again. The black vortex at her center exploded forth. The Sunset stumbled a few paces forward before she dropped down and curled into a ball. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. I'm not a bad pony. No. I'm the worst pony. I did. It was all me. Everything was me. No, it wasn't me. I don't exist. I'm just a phantom. I still did it. Sunset Shimmer is Vesper Radiance. Vesper Radiance is Sunset Shimmer. We're the same. I did it. I killed. I murdered. Sunset! She lifted her head. Twilight stood looking down at her. Apprehension and disquiet in her piercing violet eyes. Eyes of a friend who cared for her. Eyes of a stranger who had replaced her. Eyes of a protector who condemned her. Eyes of a princess who lied to her. Sunset hated those eyes. A flame amidst the cold, everlasting darkness overwhelmed her. Let's undo it, a voice told her. Go on. Hate her. This is all her fault in the end. But, no. This had been Twilight's fault. It had been her own. When Sunset stared into his eyes, the flame of hatred shot out burning tongues, searching for more fuel to devour, no matter how hard she tried to keep it down. Tell them, the wrestle part of her brain commanded. Tell them it'll all be better. She opened her mouth once more, and a faint burgling noise came from within. Breakfast! She said, suddenly getting up again. I'll tell you after breakfast. Is anyone else hungry? I know I sure am. She looked around at all of them, friends' expressions mirroring Twilight's. Her head bowed, she walked off the platform into the city of Tall Tale, hardly paying any attention to the surrounding buildings. Her body seemed alien, tight, sluggish, and heavy. Her eyes narrowed, taking in the hourglass still hanging from her chat neck. It was such a constant now, almost a part of her. Was that the extra weight she was feeling? The timepiece? Time. Sunset had traveled through time, not once, but twice. Forwards and backwards. The first time, she had jumped forward to create calamity and doom. The second, an attempt to fix it. How would it end? Sunset was only sure, no matter how it all ended, it would bring naught but pain and sorrow for her. Even now, pangs of regret and guilt and sadness plagued her every step, filling her hopes with lead. She supposed it was better than feeling nothing. Perhaps she was still equine to somewhere deep inside, even just a little bit. Her friend's whispers followed behind her, but she didn't care. She would tell them soon. She needed to. They would know everything. And they would hate her. We're the same pony, Sunset repeated, words bouncing about in her skull. Yes, I suppose, fundamentally, you are. Luna walked a circle around the table. Her chin raised in thought. Sunset, you may share a soul with her, but you've proven yourself to be quite different to your predecessor. Sunset said nothing. Still, it is an interesting phenomenon. The perfect reincarnation of a body through a soul. How exactly did it happen? Sunset asked, a pointed edge to her voice. Luna regarded her coolly, then softened her expression. Well, Sunset, all I have are theories, but I believe they are correct. Tell me, do you know the creature that Vesper Radiant stood with? Sunset shook her head. Luna looked up to the sky, depicting the night above them. It is of a most ancient species, some of the foulest creatures to stalk the land. The one that specifically was known as the Frostnitz. Luna paused, eliciting a nod for Sunset to go on. Frostnitzes are, well, all lich creatures, have a unique condition. Some call it a blessing, others call it a curse. They are immortal in the most literal sense of the word. What do you mean? Well, for example, look at the phoenix. It is a living in an ice spot. When one reaches an old age, they burst into flames to start to renew themselves, and start again from young hatchlings. However, there are ways to kill the phoenix, and it serves life cycles does not start anew. With the Frostnitz, it does not renew its life after time, nor does their immortality protect their bodies from the ravages of time. They simply continue to exist. That sounds horrible, Sunset said. Luna nodded. The bodies will decay. The minds will revert back to the most primal states. Yet they will keep moving. You could run a sword through their heart or cut off their head, and eventually they will rise again. They are just a soul operating a body, tethered to this world through their magic. A dark shadow crossed Luna's face. Vesper Radiance took that power for herself. She sought to make herself truly immortal, though I do not think she has fully comprehended what that would entail, or she didn't care. Yes, she may have thrown every last thread of reasoning out the metaphorical door by then. Either way, she bound her soul to this world, creating a body that could not die. However, Twilight did something most unexpected with the elements of harmony. Yeah, Sunset said quietly. Celestia asked her. She asked Twilight to save my soul. Our soul. Indeed, perhaps it was because of Twilight's desire to fulfill my sister's wish, or because the elements saw just how much pain you are deep inside. Regardless, they performed an odd phenomenon and removed your soul from your body. So the Vesper Radiance I saw. Sunset thought back to the high-pitched giggling, the flowing spirit darkness, and the monster sitting on Canterlot's throne. She was just a soulless puppet. More or less, yes. I assumed she was merely acting on whatever lasting emotions had been imprinted on her before her soul departed. A first ghost, almost. He sat in silence for a time before Sunset said, "So her soul, my soul, it had the magic of the frostlet, so it couldn't really go on, could it? It couldn't go back to its body since it was sealed up. Correct on both accounts, at least according to my theory. That also was constantly wavering between worlds, wanting to go on, but unable to do so. What Vesper Radiance attempted was something no pony, no creature has ever attempted to do, or even resets. It is practically impossible to go beyond speculation and guesswork." Luna sat down, across the table from Sunset. "I think it was not only the Frostlet's magic that kept her here. She still had powerful emotions she could not let go." Sunset cringed and looked up at her lap. "You mean her obsession with Celestia? Hatred for Twilight?" Luna's silence gave her the answer she needed. "So without a body to go back to, the magic just created a new one to inhabit?" "That is the best guess I can give you," Luna said. "No pony has seen what happens to a lit creature when its body fully decays. Celestia and I thought we had locked them in all its tolerance a long time ago. Evidently, we were wrong." She took a deep breath. "Your soul was already familiar with that particular body, so it sought to replicate it. Though, why you came back as a foal instead of an adult pony is anyone's guess. Perhaps there was simply not enough magic to restore you fully." "So, then my parents aren't really..." Sunset thought to the baby pictures in her living room. "You did not have a normal birth, Sunset. Twilight and Celestia must have entrusted you with a family, hoping you would have a better life." Sunset, head still bowed, ran straight into Rainbow and fell back into her rump. As she looked up, Rainbow narrowed her eyes. "You passed like 6 different diners already. You're so caught up in La La Land, you couldn't even hear us calling you." Sunset got up and looked at the small cafe they were outside of. Sorry. Her lids drooped. She took a step forward, only to have Rainbow stick a hoof out. "Seriously, Sunset, what's up? You look like some point died," and then came back to life, only to have to die again. Sunset gently put Rainbow's hoof down. "I promise I'll explain after breakfast." Rainbow frowned, but raised no argument. None of them did. He walked inside, ordered a table, and sat down. Sunset chose to a remote corner, far away from Twilight as possible. They were all arranged snugly in a booth with a few extra chairs provided. Just like Huffington, Sunset thought. History repeats itself whenever it can. She stared vacantly at the menu. Her stomach growled for food, but she was not in the mood to eat. She wanted to curl up and go to sleep, to wake up in her mother's embrace and hear that this was all a bad dream. Then again, those weren't really her parents. She killed her birth parents and been reincarnated purely from magic. Those were just her adoptive parents. And yet, Sunset loved them anyway. He had never known the truth about her. Never been privy to whatever plan Twilight was hatching. He had just taken Sunset in and loved her as their own. Would they still love me if they knew the truth? Sunset looked around the table at her friends and repeated the question. Luna had told her to trust them, but would those feelings be reciprocated? Sunset Luna stood back in Sunset's portion of the library, brighter than Vesper's, even with the thick gray clouds that stopped the sun from pouring through the skylight. "I know this is hard for you to take this in, Sunset," Luna said gently. "No, really." Sunset couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. Luna ignored it. "But there is something you need to realize before you let that thought consume you. You and Vesper are not the same pony." Sunset looked up, thunderstruck. "You're joking, right?" Her voice rose. "How can you sit there and say that with everything you've just seen? We're the exact same pony. We share the same soul." Sunset bit back a sob as the realization crashed on her. "No, Sunset, that's just it. You may have a soul, but your experiences have made you different from each other in drastic ways. You understood Vesper never grasped. You accepted friendship and true love. That doesn't create a big enough space to differentiate us. Everything she did, I did. I've stolen, killed, I turned into a monster, I ended the world, Luna!" Something literally fell in front of Sunset, followed by another piece. She looked up to see pieces of the ceiling falling away. breaking into glowing solids as they came down. The walls were doing the same, as were the books and tables. She was waking up. Sunset, Luna spoke with haste. I'm not telling you to disregard your past. I am telling you not to let yourself be defined by it. Yes, you have erred. Grievously, if I am to be honest. But look at you now. Look at what you're trying to do, what you're trying to change. Remember that as well, for your friends will urge you to do the same. What do you mean? Sunset's own voice sounded distant from her as her dream collapsed. You cannot keep this to yourself, Sunset. Such knowledge will drive you mad. You must confide in your friends. They'll hate me. I can't, and they'll never accept trusting a friend, Sunset. I'm gonna begin to fade away. Do not let your anger take you. Lean on your friends. Sunset ate her food slowly. The entire mood of the table was solemn, as you could feel Twilight's eyes occasionally bore into her. She refused to meet them. The food did not relieve the hollow feeling pervading her body. In fact, it only made her more aware of its existence. She put the fork down, feeling queasy. I thought you were hungry, Twilight asked. Sunset pushed her plate away, most of it still covered in fruit and hay. I'm good now, she grumbled. She watched the rest of them finish their meals, and with a guilt-laden promise from Twilight they would pay to dinner back later, he departed. All right, Rainbow said, hovering over Sunset. It's after breakfast. Fess up. Indeed, Sunset, Verity said. You got us all very sick. Yeah, all right. Just follow me. Sunset was walking down the street, looking for anything she could use to stall for time. But Luna was right. Holding this in was eating away at her, feasting on the remains of her very existence. It was now or never. Telltale was closer to Carolina's structure, though it lacked any of the grand finesse that the capital had. Its buildings were tall, great blocks placed at regular intervals. The streets were clean, yet they were not the polished cobblestone Sunset was so accustomed to. There was a large park with tall hills and even taller trees that Sunset found charming. She led them to one of the taller hills. At the top sat a mighty oak tree, like a king surveying his kingdom. Sunset appreciated before she noticed a flotilla of clouds riding up from the south as to challenge the tree's authority. You must be breaking up the storm at me and Huffington, pushing it off, Rainbow said, having followed Sunset's gaze. It was only a temporary distraction, though, for all eyes were on Sunset now a moment later. Right, yeah. Her stalling was up. They were expected some sort of story now, an explanation for her dreary mood. They who had not sinned, they who had not stained their past with blood and madness. She looked back up at the oak tree and smiled for the first time that day. With telekinesis, she reached up and pulled off some of the smaller branches, like she had so long ago, back in Carolot Park, when she had told the story of her cutie mark. She fastened miniature points for sticks and leaves, and with a sinking breath began her tale. Sunset kept her voice monotone, allowing the black hole to swallow up her emotions. She couldn't bother with them now, a smile alone taking up her energy. Once upon a time, there was a unicorn. She held up the first of her craft, a small, crudely made stick pony with a horn. She had been left by her parents at an orphanage when she wasn't even a year old. And as the years went by, any pony she tried to get close to got adopted, while she stayed behind, always having some pony picked over her. She levitated up a folded leaf, so she studied her books of magic, finding solace in them rather than interacting with other ponies. She recounted all that she had seen through her dreams. Her acceptance for Celestia, her stick figure had longer legs and leafy wings. Julius received, though her voice carried no emotion. Her friends were hooked on every word. Her faces, however, remained grim, even Pinky's. Maybe she already knows how this ends. Sunset thought she took a pause in her story. Twilight gasped loudly when Sunset brought in the figurine read to represent Keenan's. Sunset ignored her, too busy fighting down fury and disgust, as he explained how Keenan's came under Celestia's supervision and the consequences it created for all of them. Sunset was in two places at once. Her mouth moved and told the story, but her heart was waging a silent battle. Her emotions tried to crawl out of the black hole, but she refused to let them surface. They were not hers to begin with. The wound belonged to another pony. As she told him how Celestia accepted the unicorn as her daughter, remorse and hatred escaped the pull of her heart, bled into the bitterness of her voice. She didn't resonate her friend's cries of shock over the revelation. She just continued the story with a wavering voice. It only took more when Sunset reached what happened to Keenan's. Fences spiraled from there. Sunset held the figure of the princess and the unicorn facing each other. They had an argument. Lots of yelling. Broken hearts. Shards of pain spread forth and stabbed Sunset in the chest. She winced, but kept going. When the princess saw the unicorn had no remorse for her actions, when she saw how desperate the unicorn was to be an alicorn, she dismissed her. The princess turned and walked away from the unicorn. The unicorn was devastated, her sanity frayed. She hid in the castle in Everfree, where she stumbled upon a spell that she thought would fix everything. Sunset looked up from her little figures. Can you guess what that spell was? Most of her friends shook their heads. Twilight, however, looked too close to her mouth, eyes swimming in her face. Time travel. Sunset nodded. She found a time spell. She's going to go back in time and stop her younger self from making any mistakes. But the universe had other plans. She could see the sonic rainbow going off with the force of her magic jerking her forward in time. Rainbow looked torn between impressed and guilty. Twilight simply looked mortified, hiding behind her bangs when Sunset reached the coronation. Well, Sunset said, finding her monotone voice again. You can imagine what that did to her. She vowed to get revenge one way or the other. So now she's discovered a way. The Dark Regalia. She stole the Alicorn amulet from Zecora, learned about the Tempest Crown in the Loudsail Library. She faced no opposition that time. What? Rainbow held a hoof up. But we were there. That was when we all nearly fell out of the sky. Randy put a hoof on Rainbow's shoulder. Yes, we were. Well, that was this time. She's talking about what happened before. This is what happened in her timeline. Rainbow huffed. I hate time travel. I love it. A smile flickered across Sunset's face for the briefest moment before she returned to her story. Her voice trembled again as she spoke the confrontation between Vesper and her parents, what she did to them afterwards. She could hear the screaming in her ears, the pleas for mercy, the dark magic used to put false life into the corpses. Sunset didn't think the expressions on her friends' faces could get any grimmer. Yet their mouths were carved into general lines, and their eyes were bent in silent mourning. She moved on to finish the story. How Vesper collected the rest of the Dark Regalia and fought against the Frostlets, waiting somewhere out in the frozen tundra. Sunset added crumpled wings to the unicorn, but she knew it didn't do the monster justice. It was the horror that couldn't be replicated. Not true. I'm its replication. She raised 6 new ponies to stand in opposition to the monster. Little pebbles around their necks, save for the one in the front, was wearing a floral crown. Her pulse quickened as she described the final battle. Voice in her head screaming with rage as she relived her defeat again. He used the magic of friendship on her, sealed the monster's body away in the mountain. But he did something else with her soul. Sunset drew together the moisture in the air and made a bead of water float over the monster's chest. The princess couldn't bear to see her daughter in prison for so long, like her sister had been. So she pleaded to her faithful student to at least save the monster's soul. Her soul was spared imprisonment, but it didn't depart this world. Her magic trembled and gave out. All her crafts fell to the ground. The magic the unicorn tampered with. It made so instead of dying, she was accidentally reborn many years later. She lost all her memories. She was just a foal. Sunset closed her eyes and pressed her teeth together. A tool could be used in case things went wrong. A weapon that needed washing in case it malfunctioned as she got her memories back. The foal was given to a welcome family and masqueraded as their daughter. But it wouldn't last. The illusion would end eventually, before the monster had sealed away. She struck one of the heroes with a curse they were never able to lift. Sunset looked up at Pinkie and sat to her strength, slowly killing her every day until after 50 years, she finally gave up. The lonely sun seal on her present broken, the monster escaped. She lifted her head to the sky, feeling the cold wind blow across her face, bringing the clouds closer. You know the rest. No one said anything. Only the wind made any sound as it rustled the kingly oak, scattering leaves about. Sunset didn't dare look at her friends. She couldn't bear to see her faces, to see the scorn and hate and fear in their eyes. She almost fell backwards as someone tackled her in a tight hug. Pinkie, what are you doing? Sunset asked. Giving you a hug, of course, Pinkie whispered. Sunset sat rigid in her embrace. Why? Because you really need one. On the corner of her eye, Sunset could see everyone else moving in. She pushed Pinkie off and took a large step back. Don't you get it? She hissed. Do any of you get it? Don't you understand who and what I am? Twilight took another step forward. Sunset. I am Vesperanius, she bellowed. It was me. It was always me. I killed my own parents. I cursed Pinkie Pie. I brought Celestia and Luna to their knees, and I ended the world. Dead. All of them dead because of me. She started hyperventilating again, just keeping away, weighing as heavy as her thoughts. That's me. That's who I was. Who I am. She pressed a hoof over her heart. No, I shouldn't even exist right now. I'm just a copy. Just a copy. It was all a lie. It was all a lie. Sunset, that isn't true, Twilight said firmly. You aren't a copy. Your life is real. Even if you are... Sunset's breathing slowed. She focused her attention slowly on Twilight. It's like in the throne room, magma began running through her veins, burning her body inside. The word tumbled out like lead. This is all your fault. Twilight pinned her ears back. What? This is all your fault! Sunset stepped a hoof against the grass. You couldn't just imprison me, could you? It was funnier to drag out my suffering. My existence is just one big joke to you, isn't it? Twilight took a step back. Sunset, you never cared about me, did you? I was in serious in case things went wrong. I was never a friend. Just your sacrificial lamb! Sunset. A veil of tears colored Twilight's eyes. Before Sunset could yell anymore, Rainbow jumped in front of Twilight, wings fanned out. Hey! What's your deal? You can't blame any of this on Twilight! Why not? Sunset bared her teeth. It's her fault. She's the reason I came back to life. She's the reason I came back in time. She's the reason I... Sunset's voice faded out. A thick clump launched herself in her throat. Tears stung her eyes. But you're blaming Twilight for things that haven't even happened yet, Spike said. Sunset rounded on him. Haven't happened for you. This is my past we're talking about. She snorted like a bull and smashed it back off in a tree. Rain leaves down upon him. I can't believe I was so stupid in both lifetimes. I can't believe I listened to you. I trusted you, Twilight. You sent me back without telling me anything. Expecting me to kill my past self. Twilight gaped at her. Who said anything about killing? How else is this going to end? You think she's just going to roll over even if you manage to pry the amulet from her neck? You think Celestia's going to let her walk away after everything she's done? After everything I've done? There's only one way this to end, Twilight. She has to die. The Dark Regalia must be destroyed. Then I... A white arm pressed against Sunset's heart. She grabbed her chest, doubling over as the pain sucked through the rest of her body. Do you see the truth now, Sunset? Voice screeched in her eye. No. Go away, Sunset moaned. The burning increased. Her vision blurred. Points in front of her distorting messy outlines. Your sad life is forfeit. That is, if you choose to keep helping them. Let me have control again, Sunset Shimmer. Let me help us to survive. Sunset stared her eyes, thrusting her head back and forth. No! 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 Sunset! Her friends tried to stop her, but Sunset's horn flared and barrier pushed them all back. Step away from me! She screamed. The flames within her intensified. She gasped loudly, trying with all her might not to scream.